Mayor McQuaker personally had $5,000 withdrawn from his CIBC bank account. So that is Trudeau's Canada. The idea that some activist group can make a democratically elected council bend the knee using as their bodyguard the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal. David Menzies for Rebel News here in Emo Township, Ontario. And folks, this is about as remote as it gets in the province of Ontario. In fact, Little Emo, population 1,300, it is closer to an airfield in Minnesota than anywhere in Ontario. It's about 1,300 kilometers away from Toronto. So why has cameraman Lincoln J and I traveled this great distance to this tiny, quiet little township? Well, it's making international headlines all for the wrong reasons, because what's happening right now in Emo, Ontario, folks, this is a story of fear, censorship, compelled speech, and economic penalization. By way of background, what it's all about is an organization called Borderland Pride. And Borderland Pride, some 4 years ago, began to petition Emo to recognize June as Pride Month and to raise the Pride flag. Well, the first hitch, as you can see, I'm standing outside the municipal office. There is no flagpole. Those structures on the roof are antennae. Maybe you could raise the flag there, but I digress. Anyways, who or what is Borderland Pride? Well, let me describe from their website what they're all about. Quote, Borderland Pride is the 2SLGBTQIA plus pride organization for the Rainy River District in northwestern Ontario, Couchiching County in northern Minnesota, and the southeast of Treaty Number 3 territory, end quote. Yeah, 2S. Why does that ring a bell? Oh, yeah, it was when ex-Liberal Party of Canada President Stephen Ledrew was on the Tucker Carlson show some 6 years ago. And remember, Tucker Carlson also asked Stephen Ledrew, what's Two-Spirit?
What's Two-Spirit?
Well, Two-Spirit sounds like there's someone they don't know whether they're, fish or fowl. They don't know whether they're frick or frack. So they're clearly confused.
Yeah, and the fallout from that, folks, was that Stephen Ledrew was promptly suspended and then eventually fired by his employer, Bell Media. And you're never going to believe this. The reason Ledrew was on Tucker Carlson was he was arguing Canada is a bastion of free speech.
There's a big difference between the United States and Canada, and that's one of the differences. And I asked you, Tucker, to tell me who's in prison in Canada for saying something wrong.
Well, it turns out Ledrew was only ahead of his time, really, in terms of cancel culture, because to bring the argument back to Little Emo here, when they decided, that is, the mayor and two councillors, which constituted the majority, that they would not be recognizing Pride Month and flying a pride flag, well, Borderland Pride, they did not take that kindly. So then the lawfare began. And where did they go? They went to the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal. I know I said lawfare. I probably should have used another word, because a human rights tribunal and a human rights commission, those are kangaroo courts. They are unelected, unaccountable. They don't even follow the rules of a real court of justice. But they prevailed. And in the fallout, this town has been ordered to recognize June as Pride Month, to fly the pride flag, and they were fined $10,000. And we learned last week, and you're not going to believe this, folks, that Mayor McQuaker had $5,000 of his own money removed from his own personal CIBC bank account. Yeah, evidently, the Human Rights Tribunal has that kind of power to garnish your money. And again, I'm having deja vu. Some 2.5 years ago, the trucker convoy in Ottawa, when Justin Trudeau decided he would freeze the bank accounts of truckers he didn't like and those allies that gave to their cause.
If your truck is being used in these protests, your corporate accounts will be frozen.
Absolutely despicable. Folks, before I go any further with this report, can you help us out? Can you go to pridebullies.com and make a donation? You know, Lincoln Jay and I, we flew from Toronto to Winnipeg, and once we hit Winnipeg, we had to drive almost 5 hours to the township of Emo. And when we got to our hotel, there was no one there to let us in, so we had to spend the night in minus 28 weather in a little SUV. Unbelievable. But we think this story is worth covering. Do you think it's worth funding? If you do, go to pridebullies.com, and if you're able to, kindly make a donation. Now, when it comes to Borderland Pride, what exactly is it? It seems to be the hobby horse of legal activist Douglas Judson.
Hi, my name is Douglas Judson. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm one of the co-chairs of Borderland Pride.
He's the one driving this. He evidently has roots in the Emo Township. By all indication, he appears to have a chip on his shoulder that this is one of the communities here in northwestern Ontario that is not recognizing Pride. You know, it's kind of funny. Mr. Judson has stated in the media that he might give some of the money back as long as the town uses that money to host a drag queen show at the local library. I mean, it's absolutely despicable. Now, what's even more despicable is how the cone of silence has descended on this town. We wanted to interview Mayor McQuaker, who is, by the way, a great-grandfather, about this issue, and he would not come on camera. And the reason we came all the way down here from Toronto today is that there is a council meeting happening as we speak, but it's in camera, which means that it's confidential, that media and members of the public are not able to attend. I think the ostensible policy reason is to hammer out what kind of response the town is going to present to the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal. Now, I also spoke to the CEO of the township of Emo, and she told me for now it's no comment, and that depending on how this meeting goes, I believe the idea is to consult the lawyers, and then perhaps she will have a comment. Notably, Mayor McQuaker is not in this meeting because of a conflict of interest. I'm not sure I understand that, but he's not there, and nor is he available to come on camera. But at the end of the day, is this not what Jordan Peterson warned us of years ago? That Canada is descending into a quasi-banana republic, a place where if you do not follow the party line when it comes to correct thought, if you dare utter wrong thought, if you don't get with the program when it comes to political correctness and wokeism, you will be punished, even economically punished. This is an absolute disgrace. This is an attack on our freedoms, on our rights to free speech, free expression. And another question arises, folks. Where in blue hell is Ontario Premier Doug Ford? This story is getting headlines the world over. And where is the Premier on this? Has he made any announcements that he will rein in the Ontario Human Rights Commission and the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal? No, he's absolutely silent. But why? I thought he was a conservative Premier. Well, once again, Doug Ford never fails to disappoint. In any event, folks, we're not going to get any comment whatsoever from the municipal office. The hub of the town is a place called Cloverfield Grocery. Why don't we go down the road and see if we can get somebody to weigh in on this egregious situation? This is the main hub in town, as the name implies. This is where you get your groceries. They've also got a little food service kiosk. I just had the most delicious potato and bacon soup. There's a lottery ticket kiosk. They do some financial transactions, typically converting Canadian to American currency and vice versa, given the proximity to the Minnesota border. But here's the thing. We wanted to do streeters, get the opinion of the average man and woman on the street here in Emo Township, find out what they think about compelled speech, about the town being fined, about Mayor McQuaker being penalized. And here's the thing, nobody would come on camera. Now, off camera and off the record, they are all appalled and infuriated by this decision. We couldn't find one supporter, but they won't say so on camera. And why is that? Well, welcome to Justin Trudeau's Canada, folks. It was some 2 years ago that Justin Trudeau decided to freeze the bank accounts of those truckers and their allies that he didn't agree with. And as we found out with this decision by the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal, Mayor McQuaker personally had $5,000 withdrawn from his CIBC bank account. So that is Trudeau's Canada. You are not allowed to have so-called wrong think. You are not allowed to harbor a contrarian opinion. And if you do, you will be deemed a hater and a bigot, and you will face economic penalization. I think that's at the nub of this matter, folks, as to why people won't come on camera. They are terrified of being penalized. They are scared of being ostracized. And let's face it, in Justin Trudeau's Canada, can anyone afford to have thousands of dollars plucked out of their bank accounts because they are not thinking like blackface does? Well, folks, here we are back at the Emo Municipal Office, and for all we know, the meeting is still going on. In the final analysis, folks, this situation here is both egregious and outrageous. The idea that some activist group can make a democratically elected council bend the knee using as their bodyguard the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal, that is completely offside. And by the way, I ask, where is the local domestic media? As I said, it's getting international headlines, but I don't see even the state-sponsored media, CBC, which has an affiliate in Thunder Bay. Oh, keep in mind, it's not as though they're ignoring the story. CBC was here 4 years ago, in which Borderline Pride organized an unofficial Pride protest campaign. And as you can imagine, it was a completely glowing article for the activists who are all about compelled speech. So just think of that. Here you have your involuntarily taxpayer-funded state broadcaster cheering on an activist group that is all about compelled speech, censorship, and monetary penalization. It is despicable. We're going to continue to keep our eye on this situation. We don't want it to spread. In the meantime, if you can go to pridebullies.com, that's pridebullies.com, sign our petition, and if you're able to, Lincoln J and I travel a great distance on economical terms to cover this story. I wish we could get the players on camera, but as I said before, it is a climate of fear here in Emo Township. That's the Canada we're in right now, isn't it? You will think a certain way, a certain woke way, or you will be canceled and you will be financially disciplined. And in this case, it's coming from the LGBT community, which, always used to be about tolerance and acceptance. But it's now much more, isn't it? It's about affirmation. This community, or at least the activists in this community, are saying it's not enough to accept us and to tolerate us. you must stand on that apple box and you must applaud, or else you will be punished. This is Justin Trudeau's Canada in 2024. Ready for some regime change? Ready for the pendulum to be swung back to normalcy? I sure am. For Rebel News, I'm David the Menzoid Menzies. Folks, bit by bit, we are losing our rights in Canada. Freedom of expression, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and now apparently municipalities that are not in line with the love trumps hate rainbow mafia community, well, they're losing their freedom too. Please, if you can, go to pridebullies.com. That's pridebullies.com. Sign the petition, and if you're able to, kindly make a donation.